Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite stories. We had a number of guests while we were still living in Adelaide. Well, it was interesting hearing their stories because a lot of them had come from Europe and they'd come overland across the Asian continent, and then they were cycling around Australia. So that was our first introduction to this concept of long distance touring. And one of the first guests that we had, he was 80 years old. Well, we think he was 80. he was a bit coy about his age, but he must have been about 80 because he'd been retired for longer than I'd been working at that time. He was telling us about his cycling adventures, and that made us start thinking, oh, well, if an 80-year-old can do it, then we could do it too. So he didn't give us any particular advice on where to go or anything, but just the fact that he was cycle touring when he was 80 years old made us start thinking about doing a big tour ourselves. Then we started seeing a few more guests from Europe who'd come over the Pamir Highway, and that sounded like such an exotic tour. Then we had a young guest, a young lad from, I think it was Sweden, and he told us his story that he just started his tour just on a whim. He bought a bike and decided that he wanted to go for a tour around the world after he'd finished high school, I think. And he said that he didn't even know how to change a tire at that time. By the time he arrived to us, I think he'd been touring for about 12 months at least. So he shared with us his stories, and then he left on his way. And when I was tidying up after he'd left, I discovered that he had left behind a T-shirt accidentally. And this T-shirt had on it Istanbul Technical University. So I joked to him at that time. I said, well, I won't send the shirt back to you because we're thinking of doing our own tour to Turkey. So when we do go to Turkey, we'll take the shirt back to its homeland. We did eventually plan our tour, got everything organized, and we did do our tour to Turkey in 2018. I contacted him at the start and I said, look, we're finally doing it and we're heading to Turkey and I'm bringing your shirt. Then he said, well, let me know when you get closer and I will put you in touch with the person who gave me that shirt. So it turns out that the shirt was actually given to him by a Warm Showers host in Turkey. So we did get in touch with the original owner of the shirt. We met in Istanbul and we presented the shirt back to him, and he was amazed that this shirt had gone across Asia and back again to him. And he said he never thought that he would see the shirt again, let alone that it would be carried to him on a bicycle. So yeah, the spectrum, I guess, from the oldest guest that we had to the youngest guest, I think that the combination, I guess, inspired us to eventually do our big tour. Hello, everyone. My name is Geraldine Yam. My partner Ian and I have been on Warm Showers since probably 2013, I think. We have previously been guests, and right now we're currently living in Vientiane, which is the capital of Laos. So we moved here in 2000. Prior to that, we were hosting in Adelaide, Australia. That's a good question. Actually, I hadn't heard about Warm Showers before. I only found out about it when I was doing some research for our first cycling holiday. I wouldn't call it a cycle tour that we went on in 2013. At that time, we had foldable bikes and we were going to take them for a 3-week tour around France and a little bit of Germany. And I was just researching good areas to cycle. In this research, I came across this site, Warm Showers, and I thought, oh, what's this? And that's when I first found out about Warm Showers, and I signed up. Unfortunately, on that trip, there weren't any hosts on the route that we had planned out, but we had our first experience of Warm Showers in 2015 when we went to Japan, and we were hosted there for the first time. It's probably helped us to connect with people from different cultures more as a guest. as we're cycling through different lands. And some of these countries, it's difficult to connect with locals because they don't speak English. Many of them, they're shy because they're not confident with English. But we've found that Warm Showers hosts have been very excited in these more developing countries to host people because it's a chance for them to practice their English and to meet people from other countries that they would never have a chance of going to because they don't have the financial means, they can't get the passport to travel out of their countries. So yeah, we found that to be such a valuable way to meet people from the local areas, to talk with them about life in their country, different customs, to see how they live in their households, which is very different from Western cultures, and also to hear from them as well, like what their perspective is of these strange foreigners who come cycling through. It is quite unusual. I mean, now that we are living in Laos ourselves, we can kind of see it from the local perspective as well, that like we're quite a strange breed, these cyclists who come from the other side of the world. Our hosting experience has been mainly in Southeast Asia and Central Asia. So yeah, more of the developing nations. We've not cycled through developed countries so much. So I don't have much of a perspective from that angle, but certainly going through these developing countries and finding hosts in these countries has been wonderful. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of hosts in these developing countries, maybe because they're not so aware of warm showers. The platform, I guess, it's a little not geared too much towards non-English speakers. So that could be something that Warm Showers could probably improve on. So as I said, we've been both. We've been hosted a lot, and we've hosted a lot of people, especially now that we've moved to Laos. As I mentioned before, there are not a lot of hosts, so we actually get an abundance of guests coming through because we're pretty much the only ones who are active hosts in this area. So I guess my advice to hosts is don't be disheartened if you perhaps don't get a lot of guests, because we found that when we were living in Australia, there was a lot of competition and we wouldn't really get that many guests coming through. We were fortunate that we lived near the airport, so a lot of our guests would choose us because we were located close to the airport. And then now here in Laos, we've got pretty much a monopoly on hosting here. But we have heard from some of our guests who have come from Germany or France, these areas where there are hundreds of hosts, and they said they don't get a chance to host anyone because there are so many hosts. So don't be disheartened if you don't get any approaches. But if you do, then it's good to respond as quickly as possible if you are really interested in hosting someone. And as a guest, I would say making some small gestures of appreciation is very much welcomed by hosts. Bringing them some fruit, or maybe bringing them some sweet treats. Just something small. As you're doing long tours in particular, finances may be tight, but it's always much appreciated to just show something that indicates that you regard the host as more than just a free accommodation. In Turkey, we found a host in one city, Konya, and then he put us in touch with his brother, who was living a bit further on in another city that was somewhat on our way. So we went there next to stay with his brother. He kept in touch with us. He would periodically message to just find out how we were going on our tour. Turkish people are very hospitable, and they're very concerned about the welfare of their guests. a lot of hosts would actually keep in touch quite often because they are genuinely interested in your journey and in your well-being in their country. So his brother Sefa, we were hosted at him in his parents' house for a couple of nights. Then we kept in touch until we arrived at our final destination in Istanbul. At that time, he just finished his job, so we invited him to come to Istanbul and meet us there if he had some spare time. In the end, he did. He did come over, and we jokingly said that, oh, well, now we can host you because we'd rented an Airbnb in Istanbul. So we said, well, now we're hosting you in Istanbul. We had a great time for, I think, 3 or 4 days until he had to go back. But we've still kept in touch over these years. And even after we finished our tour, I did go back to Turkey to visit him, not as a cyclist, just as a tourist and just to visit him as a friend. And that's where he introduced me to some of his friends from the local cycling club who took me around and then presented me with the Turkish flag that you see in the background right now. So that's why we have this Turkish flag in the corner of our house here in Laos. We also do have a recent story of a longer lasting relationship with a guest that we've had here in Laos. So a couple of years ago, we had a guest, Matt. He was actually an American, but he's living in China. He's been a teacher in China for the last decade or so. He'd come to Laos just to do a short tour around Laos, and he really enjoyed it, even though he couldn't spend as much time as he planned at that time. He then kept in touch, came again to finish the rest of the tour he didn't do, and then went back and told all his friends in China how great it is to tour Laos. And he was trying to organize a tour for them, for this cycling group, to come over from China. Unfortunately, he left it a bit late, so they already had other plans. But we said to him, oh, look, if you're still interested in coming, why don't you come over during that time, which was Chinese New Year? We can cycle with you. We can do our own tour and take you to this part of Laos, which was having its elephant festival at the time. So he did. So in the end, the person who'd come as a guest twice, he actually came and became a cycling partner with us, which is quite unusual for us. We'd only cycled with one other person before for a long term. That was someone we'd met on our tour in 2018. We generally don't cycle tour with other people. So it was interesting to then get Matt back, and we cycled together for a week or so. Our first experience as a Warmshowers guest, it wasn't an unusual place, but the hospitality that we received was above and beyond and has not been matched since then. So this was a host in Japan, and actually the person who'd set up the profile was the son who'd set it up on behalf of the parents. And he explained to us that the parents didn't speak English, but they wanted to give back to society and host travelers, because they'd been hosted a lot during their tour. I think they did some pilgrimage on Shikoku Island in Japan, and then they wanted to somehow be part of a network that would host travelers. So the son signed them up to Warmshowers. They had a fairly modest house, but the most comfortable futon that we've ever experienced. The son then took us to an onsen in the evening, a very local onsen. Before we went out to the onsen, the mother then said, if you need to do any laundry, leave the laundry with me and I'll do it. So while we were out enjoying ourselves at the onsen, mother was doing our laundry. We came back and everything was laundered and dried and smelled amazing. We had a beautiful sleep in the futon overnight. The next morning it was raining when we'd planned to leave. She said that if you want to, you can stay another night. And we said, oh, well, thanks very much, but we're actually on a tight schedule. And she packed us these gift bags, these snack bags to take with us as well. That was on top of, I think, spending about 6 hours cooking some bamboo for breakfast. That was amazing. And after that experience, my partner and I joked that we could never compare as hosts after this experience.